Wallace Hartley's Violin. While the Titanic sank, violinist Wallace Hartley and his fellow musicians continued to play. Their final song, Nearer My God to Thee, performed until they could no longer remain above water. A surviving passenger claimed that Hartley's last words to his bandmates were, "Gentlemen, I bid you farewell." When Hartley finally went into the water, he reportedly tried to use his leather bag as a location device and put the violin, a gift from his fiancée, Maria Robinson, inside it. The bow was too long to fit, and Hartley's body was found 10 days later, along with the water-damaged violin. His fiancée requested it back. In 2006, the violin was discovered in her attic by an amateur musician. The old instrument still had an engraved plaque on it that read, "For Wallace, on the occasion of our engagement, from Maria." After 7 years of study, it was verified authentic and went up for auction in 2013. The violin fetched a whopping £1.7 million and is considered to be one of the most important artefacts ever recovered from the Titanic. 5 Steinway Grand pianos. Underwater footage of the Titanic wreck shows a still-standing and mostly intact grand piano. In fact, there were 5 grand pianos on the ship, 3 of which were for first-class passengers. Among those 3 was Steinway's crown jewel, a Model B, which was specially customised for the ship. There was also a Model R, which was discontinued in 1942, and a Model K, which remains in production to this day. A 1912 refurbished Model M was recently put up for auction for nearly £35,000. Imagine how much the actual sunken pianos are worth. 4 cases of opium. John Jacob Astor IV, one of the world's richest men, also went down with the Titanic. The American Astor family made their fortune in fur trading and later opium. In 1909 though, the US Congress outlawed the smoking of opium. Somehow, 4 cases of opium still made it onto the Titanic, only to wind up at the bottom of the ocean. A Mary Joseph Blondel painting. Many expensive pieces of art were on board the Titanic when it sank, though thankfully not the Picasso depicted in James Cameron's blockbuster. One piece of art that was on board was La Circassiana Bane by artist Mary Joseph Blondel, created in 1814. It was brought on board by Swedish businessman Moritz Harken Bjornström Stephenson. He survived the disaster and later demanded $100,000 for the lost painting. It was the largest claim made against the White Star Line for a single item. A handwritten manuscript by Joseph Conrad. In 1898, Joseph Conrad's Tales of Unrest was published. The collection of short stories included Karen, a Memory, the 3rd short story Conrad had ever written. Conrad sent a handwritten copy to an American collector. The manuscript wound up in the Titanic mailroom, along with the other 7 million pieces that would never reach their destination. First edition essays by Francis Bacon. Book collector Henry Elkins Widener went on a book hunting trip to England in 1912. There he bought a rare miniature 1598 first edition of essays by famed philosopher and statesman Sir Francis Bacon. His incredible find came with him on the Titanic. When disaster struck, he ensured his mother and her maid went onto a lifeboat. He himself was not so lucky. He and his precious tome ended up below the waves. Supposedly, the Bacon book was slipped into his tuxedo pocket. A jewel-encrusted edition of the Rubaiyat. The Rubaiyat is a book of poems by medieval Persian philosopher and mathematician Omar Khayyam. He was born 1048 and died 1131. English writer and poet Edward Fitzgerald translated the poems to English for the first time in 1860, and they were published to great acclaim. In 1911, the publishing house Sangorsky and Sutcliffe made a particularly lavish copy. It featured a Moroccan leather cover decorated with embroidered peacocks and more than 1,000 gems set in gold. The impressive volume went on exhibition in England before being auctioned off to an American buyer for a little over $2,000. It was loaded onto the Titanic to be shipped to its new owner. An autographed picture of war hero Giuseppe Garibaldi. Emilio Ilario Giuseppe Portalupe was returning to the United States on board the Titanic after visiting his native Italy. Among his valuables, he claimed he was carrying a signed photograph of Italian war hero Giuseppe Garibaldi. He later made an insurance claim of $3,000 for the picture. He was one of the 4 incredibly lucky people saved when Lifeboat 14, headed by 5th Officer Harold Law, went back to look for survivors. Emilio kept himself alive by clinging to a chunk of ice. Bone china, plates and cups. Each class on the Titanic had a different set of china, and many of the dishes are still intact at the bottom of the ocean. Reproductions of Titanic dishes are a hot commodity for collectors, and when some genuine recovered plates and teacups went up for auction, with some other items in 2012, the value of the entire collection was estimated to be a whopping $189 million. Jewellery owned by first-class passengers. After 73 years underwater, the Titanic was discovered by Dr. Robert Ballard in 1985. 2 years later, an expedition descended the 12,000 feet and discovered a small leather satchel. When they brought it up, they were shocked at what they found: a collection of fine jewellery still in pristine condition. Among the jewels were necklaces, rings, brooches, cufflinks, and even a pocket watch. According to scientists, the tanning process used to make the leather bag was able to fight off underwater microorganisms and protect the jewellery. Who knows what other valuable pieces are still waiting to be discovered. The steward's pocket watch. The pocket watch belonged to a first-class steward on the ship named Edmund Stone. He held the master key to the first-class cabin. The watch stopped ticking at 12:16 a.m. likely the exact moment that Edmund Stone landed in the icy Atlantic waters. It was sold in 2008 for £130,000. A full-length beaver fur coat. Not many pieces of clothing made it beyond the ship, but this full-length beaver fur coat belonging to first-class stewardess Mabel Bennett did. The coat was reportedly floating in the water and was fished out by someone in a lifeboat. It was sold for £210,000 at auction, which was twice the estimated price. It was the only fully intact piece of clothing that survived from the Titanic that was put up for auction. A marmalade machine. Miss Edwina or Winnie Celia Trout was 27 years old and travelling back to America from England, where she assisted her sister in giving birth. She was originally set to sail on the Oceanic, but was transferred to the Titanic because of a delay due to a coal strike. When the ship hit the iceberg, she put on her heaviest coat and encouraged her roommate to hurry up, at one point tossing the woman's corset down the aisle, telling her this was no time for a corset. She filed a claim against the White Star Line for the loss of her marmalade machine. Perfume. One of the first-class passengers aboard the Titanic was a perfume maker from England by the name of Adolphe Saalfeld. His satchel and vials of perfume sank with the ship, and there they remained for 89 years until 2001, when they were discovered by members of an artefacts search team. When they brought the satchel to the surface and back to their ship and opened it, they were overwhelmed with the aroma of lavender and roses. Some of the vials had broken, but most were amazingly intact. A 1912 Renault Type CB Coupe de Ville. The Renault CB Coupe, owned by first-class passenger William Carter, was the only automobile thought to have been brought onto the ship. Both Carter and his family survived the sinking, and he later made a £5,000 insurance claim for his brand new automobile. Historians say the car was held in a cargo hold on the front of the ship, which remains mostly intact on the ocean floor, while the value of the actual recovered vehicle is unknown. In 2003, a similar car was sold at auction for £250,000. The real version, if ever recovered, would surely fetch millions. And this concludes the video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please click the like button, give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe for future videos. Thank you.